Do you remember the plastic tablecloths and the deafening noise of the roller rink parties from your childhood? But then there was that one specific Tuesday in 1978 when you just came home from school. No streamers, no pile of wrapped gifts, just the low hum of the refrigerator and a parent working late. You learned early that the calendar doesn't always stop just because you completed another trip around the sun. Fast forward 40 years, and you are the one standing in the back of the office break room. You watch a colleague blow out candles while feigning surprise, and you quietly sip your lukewarm coffee. When your own date approaches, you don't broadcast it on social media or drop subtle hints to friends. You let the day slide by like a phantom, unnoticed by everyone except maybe a relentless computer algorithm. Friends might think you are being modest, or perhaps they assume you simply forgot the date entirely. But inside your mind, there is a complex architecture of memory and silence that they cannot see. You aren't forgetting. You are actively engaging in a quiet rebellion against the performance of happiness. Consider the coworker who shrugs when you wish them a happy birthday, looking genuinely confused by the fuss. It is not an act. They have fundamentally rewired the way they process personal validation and time. To understand them, we have to go back to the kitchen table where expectations first met reality. For some, the silence isn't peaceful. It is a fortress built from years of quiet letdowns. Imagine a child waiting for a celebration that gets canceled because things are just too tight right now. You learn to shrink your desires until they fit inside the small, safe space of a normal day. If you never ask for the cake, you never have to deal with the stinging absence of it. This isn't just about birthdays. It is a survival mechanism that bleeds into every part of life. You walk through promotions and anniversaries with the same guarded steps, waiting for the floor to drop. It isn't always about trauma. Sometimes it is just the sheer, crushing weight of the calendar itself. You wake up, check the urgent notifications on your phone, and suddenly it is already noon. Your brain shifts into a kind of triage mode where only the emergencies get a seat at the table. In this state, a birthday feels less like a celebration and more like another administrative task to manage. You see this in the parents who remember their child's dental appointment but forget their own age. It creates a peculiar kind of numbness, a gray static where a Tuesday looks exactly like a Saturday. This is cognitive overload, masquerading as humility, stripping away the colors of the day. When you are drowning in the immediate, the special becomes a luxury you simply cannot afford. But there is a third group, hiding in plain sight, who are doing something entirely different. They aren't running from pain, and they aren't buried under a mountain of to-do lists. Watch them when they receive a compliment on a project they worked on for 6 months. They smile, say a quiet thank you, and go right back to work without looking around. This is the quiet confidence that unnerves people who run entirely on external fuel. They have built an internal engine that doesn't need a spark from the outside world to keep running. It is a rare form of emotional autonomy that looks like indifference to the untrained eye. They don't need the cake to know they matter, because they already approved of themselves at breakfast. And here is the part nobody talks about when we analyze these silent, sturdy types. This level of self-sufficiency can feel incredibly lonely to the people who love them. When you stop needing the world to celebrate you, you sometimes stop letting the world in at all. It raises a difficult question about the fine line between being strong and being untouchable. You begin to notice that this behavior is rarely isolated to just one day a year. Watch how they handle a major promotion or a significant anniversary in their relationship. While others are popping champagne, they are quietly asking what time the meeting is tomorrow. They have trained themselves to metabolize joy efficiently, without any wasted motion or public display. But there is a hidden cost to this kind of ironclad emotional independence. Many of these people belong to a bridge generation that was taught to be seen and not heard. They grew up in empty houses, making their own snacks and solving their own problems before dark. The lesson was drilled deep. Needing attention was a weakness, and self-reliance was the only currency. So they became the architects of their own stability, requiring no external scaffolding to stand tall. But when you don't practice receiving love in small doses, a large dose feels overwhelming. A surprise party doesn't feel like a gift. To them, it feels like a chaotic loss of control. They stand in the center of the room, smiling politely, but their eyes are checking the exits. It is the paradox of the strong friend who supports everyone else but cannot accept a hand. They have become the rock for so many others that they forgot they are also made of flesh. To them, a compliment often feels like a debt that immediately needs to be repaid. If you give them a gift, you can almost see them calculating the weight of the obligation. So they choose the safety of the shadows, where no one owes them anything at all. It is a calm, quiet existence, stripped of the messy complications of being celebrated. Yet, even the most independent fortress has a window somewhere that looks out at the world. And occasionally, late at night, they might wonder if they built the walls a little too high. There is a profound resilience in this silence, a strength forged in the fires of early independence. These are the people who keep the world turning while everyone else is distracted by the spotlight. They are the ones who show up at 3 a.m. when your car breaks down without asking for thanks. Their refusal to celebrate themselves is often a byproduct of a life spent prioritizing everyone else's needs. But eventually, the strategy of just another Tuesday begins to reshape the very landscape of the heart. When you stop marking the milestones, time begins to lose its texture and becomes a flat, endless road. You might find yourself 10 years down the line wondering where all the bright colors went. This is the danger of the survival mode that worked so well when you were 25. At 50, that same protective shell can feel less like a shield and more like a cage. You have become so good at not needing anything that you've forgotten how to want anything. But then, you see a small child blowing out a candle with absolute unshielded, shimmering joy. For a split second, the wall cracks, and you remember the weight of that forgotten plastic tablecloth. You realize that the celebration wasn't about the cake, or the noise, or the social media status. It was about the simple, radical act of being seen by another human being and being told, "I'm glad you're here." Independence is a magnificent tool, but it is a cold, lonely place to call a permanent home. Even the most secure internal validation system needs a little bit of external sunlight to grow. We are social creatures designed for the exchange of recognition, like breath moving in and out. To deny the celebration is to slowly starve the part of us that connects to the tribe. You don't have to throw a parade, but you might need to leave the door unlocked. The bridge between being self-sufficient and being loved is shorter than you have been led to believe. We are the bridge generation, the ones who learned how to carry the weight without making a single sound. We watched our parents work until their dreams were tucked away in drawers, and we simply followed their lead. Now we watch a world where every feeling is broadcasted, yet we sit comfortably in the quiet middle ground. Perhaps you ignore your birthday because you don't want to be a burden on a world that already feels heavy. Or maybe you've finally reached that summit where your own opinion of yourself is the only one that matters. Both paths are valid, and both tell the story of how you survived the long, silent years in between. But remember that your life is more than a series of responsibilities handled and emergencies solved with gritted teeth. It is a narrative that deserves a punctuation mark, a brief moment to simply breathe and acknowledge the journey. You don't need an elaborate party or a social media countdown to justify your space on this earth tonight. But you do deserve the quiet permission to feel significant, even if it is only for a single breath. So, the next time that specific date on the calendar rolls around, don't just treat it like another Tuesday. You don't have to announce it to the room, but you should at least announce it to yourself clearly. Look in the mirror and acknowledge the person who has survived the storms and kept the lights on alone. Acknowledge the child who learned to be okay with the empty kitchen table and tell them they are safe. Because the most profound celebration isn't the one everyone else sees, it is the one happening in the quiet. It is the moment you finally stop protecting yourself from disappointment and simply start allowing yourself to exist. So, which one are you? The fortress, the survivor, or the person who is finally ready to be seen? Whatever your answer, just know that the silence you've cultivated is heard, and your presence is deeply felt here. Tomorrow will likely be just another Wednesday, but today, for just a moment, let yourself be exactly where you are. You have traveled a long way to get to this Tuesday. It is okay to stop and look at the view.